All right, so grab your ecology notes and a highlighter and a pencil so you can take notes. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy the ecology unit. Ecology is the study of how organisms act together. And I think the best example that will make sense to you all is Nemo living in his sea anemone. And so the clownfish, Nemo, and the sea anemone, which is kind of like a jellyfish, they live together in what we call a symbiotic relationship. And so go ahead and write that down, that example down, because that's a good one. They live together in a happy relationship. The clownfish, or Nemo, gets a place to live, and the sea anemone, it gets cleaned. Remember at the very first of the movie, the dad is like, you got to brush your teeth or brush your... I don't remember what he says, but the clownfish goes back and forth inside the sea anemone and it cleans it. And so the clownfish gets somewhere to live and the sea anemone gets cleaned. They're both happy. They're both benefiting from that relationship. And so that's just one example of organisms and their relationships and how they live together. And so that's what ecology is. It's the interaction occurring between organisms and their environment. Where they live. Do they live in the warm, very moist Alabama, or do they live in the dry desert or the cold tundra? And so where they live. And in ecology, we're going to talk about things that are biotic. All animals, plants, bacteria, we're all alive. And we're going to talk about things that are not alive. Water is not alive. And if you look at the bottom of the notes, the abiotic factors are listed. Temperature, water, sunlight, rocks. If you think about the nitrogen, any element on the periodic table, that's not alive. And that's why biology is so much better than chemistry, because biology, we're studying living things. But in ecology, we will take into consideration things like how much water is available, what the temperature is like. Okay, so you got abiotic is from the prefix and suffixes, not living. And then biotic would just be living. Okay, so let's look at the levels of organization. Okay, so one organism is just that organismal level. So think about, the whale you see here. That's just one organism. And then a population would be a group of the same organism. So when they say the human population in Trustful is a certain number, they're talking about just the people. Right? And so right here it just shows a group of zebras. That's just the population of zebras. And so an organism is one, but the population is all of them. Okay, the community would be, and you can actually see it from this picture, all the living things. So you got the tree, the grass, the zebra. All the living things make up the communities. And so here you can see the giraffe and the zebra. Okay, so community is going to be all the living organisms. Ecosystem would be the living and the non-living. And so on ecosystem, underline abiotic. Okay, and then you've got landscape. That's just basically how the land is. Is it mountains? Is it flat? Is it water? And then biosphere looks at how all the biomes act together. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause the video, and this should be pretty easy. And out beside each level, just give me an example. And so you may want to start at the biosphere, which would probably be the world, and work down. And so pause the video and go ahead and do that for me. Okay, so we're back with biogeography, and that's just where geography is, on the map, right, the world. Where do the organisms live? For example, we've got, brown squirrels that can glide over here. We've got brown squirrels that can glide over in Europe. And so where they live, kangaroos are, mainly in Australia, not in the United States. And so just the study of where organisms live. And then a normal species would be a species that is from that area. And so pine trees are from here. They're normal species. They're from here. A transplant species would be a species that's not from here. We brought these trees in and we planted them here at Trussville High School to make them look pretty because we liked the way they were. If you have a cactus, a lot of people have cactuses in their house, like potted. Those are transplant species. They're not from here. Okay, so normal species would be normal to the area. A transplant species would not be. And this actually shows you zebra mussels. And so they're little slimy mussels that look like zebras. And so that's why they're called zebra mussels. And they were accidentally brought here into the United States. Another example is fire ants. They were brought in like Mobile Bay. In mounds of dirt. So fire ants were accidentally brought into the United States. Some things that were intentionally brought would be kudzu, and you can see, I know you've seen kudzu around, but kudzu was originally brought over here to help with erosion. But we can see it's taken over. Kudzu is everywhere, and it's hard to kill, and the reason is because kudzu doesn't have any predators. It doesn't have any natural predators here. So write that in. Kudzu has no natural predators. And so the balance of the ecosystem is where the organisms maintain a certain level of numbers. And that number never gets too high because they have a predator. And so anytime an organism is brought here, it can pose a problem if there's no predator here for it. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause the video and Google, why were African killer honeybees brought to the U.S.? Why were they brought to the U.S.? Because I told you kudzu was brought here for erosion. Okay, here's a picture that shows you about the ant migration, and it started down in Mobile, and it has traveled up the United States. And I know fire ants are pretty rough here in Trussville. We have those a pretty good bit. Okay, the next thing on the notes is just those abiotic factors. So take a second and look at those beside abiotic, right, non-living. And right, biology is better than chemistry. No, I'm just kidding. And then the last thing, there's some fire ant bites. There's your African killer bee, so be able to answer that tomorrow. Okay, and then the last thing is just about climate. The tundra is cold. Some deserts are cold and some deserts are hot. A desert is just dry. That's the definition of the desert is dry. And so I hope this was helpful. I'll see you tomorrow.